You've tuned into the Team Shelby Racing Show. Get in, buckle up, hang on. We're going live. Join the Team Shelby Racing crew as they bring you the inside scoop, track breakdowns, driver interviews, and exclusive Team Shelby Club news.
All right, my name is John Wasilewski. I'm here with Team Shelby Racing. I'm the media manager for Team Shelby Racing, and I'm here today with our special guest, Ernie Santana. Welcome, Ernie.
Thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.
I had the opportunity to meet Ernie earlier. Say that 10 times in a row.
Tongue twister.
Yeah, earlier this year upon his arrival of his beautiful 2019 Ford GT. And what a day that was.
Oh my gosh, what is it ever?
Go ahead and reflect just a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit because I've already got goosebumps.
You know, it's the interesting thing about that day is that it was really a long time in the making, right? And I really, in order to analyze that day from my perspective, you have to go all the way back to when I was a kid, and that's where my passion, was born. And it really is as simple as saying that it was born out of playing with Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars.
And that's how a lot of us boys, and I'm not going to limit it to just boys because my sister played with cars too. So.
There you go.
But majority of the boys, that's how it all started, Hot Wheels, Matchbox. And I know that you had one particular special Hot Wheel you told me about,
Yeah,
Matchbox.
That was, it's, I'm a lucky man in many respects, but the most interesting thing, or the thing that I love about life is that you're enriched by having so many wonderful things, so many stories as you grow, right? And to be able to look back on them and say, that's an inflection point. That's when this started. This is where things changed. And, that's a wonderful thing to be able to reminisce about, right? So in 1968, my grandmother had an operation, right? And back then, kids weren't allowed to go into hospitals. But for some reason, they snuck me into the hospital, and that was before private rooms. So back then, you'd have one or two other people in your room,
Yeah.
right? So I remember seeing my grandmother in a hospital gown in the hallway of the hospital, and we were kind of like sneaking in there, and she talks to me for a few minutes, and then she gives me, I guess she had a pocket on her, or maybe it was behind her back, but she gives me a little car. And it was the GT40,
Yes.
right? And when I saw this car, I'm like, it was like, this is the most amazing, Hot Wheel I've ever seen, right? And that's where it started. It was, a love affair, basically, that I had with Ford ever since I was a child. So fast forward, when I was already, married, we had a Mustang in the family, and that led, to a Bronco 2, and before you know it, I had a long list of F-150s and Mustangs, and it just grew, and before you know it, you look back and you say, wait a minute, I'm a Ford guy. You're right. I love all kinds of cars, but Ford is the foundation of where everything was built.
I get that. I grew up in Detroit, so it's very hard for me because Detroit was divided, literally. There's the Ford side of town, there's the Chrysler side of town, and there's the GM side of town. So you could pretty much tell where you were at by the neighborhood you drove through, you know. So and people are, if you've known some people from Detroit area, they're very dedicated, like you said, to their brand of
Yes.
vehicle,
Yeah.
and they don't stray. So although I would say, you know, I love Chevys, I'm like you. Horsepower, it doesn't matter. It's styling, it's ingenuity, it's technology, it's all those things. I every time I talk about it, I tell people it could be a baby buggy
Right.
with horsepower. I'll be there if it's competitive. And it doesn't necessarily have to be competitive, because the auto shows, like the custom auto shows, are a great passion to me too. And some of those cars are never 0 miles, you know, just trailering them on and off. But the talk about a little bit about the again, extending that. Now you have this beautiful. You had a previous GT.
Well, there's a hell of a story there. So I think it was '03 when Ford shows the concept car, right? So when they show this car, I'm like, you know, and it was immediate. Like, it wasn't a question of, gee, you know, you think I can one day get this car? I mean, like, or how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't care if I have to sell a kidney. You know, if they make this car, I'm going to get this car, whatever it takes. And it's interesting because, you know, I want to put a footnote here, because at the time, the most expensive car I had ever bought was, you know, a $30,000 car, right? Yeah. So it was the beginning of, you know, of an escalation of sorts. But when I saw, that concept car, I think it was a yellow car, I'm like, oh my Lord, you know, this is just brought me back. I probably hadn't thought of the GT40 my grandmother gave me for, what was it at the time? 30 years?
Exactly.
Right?
Until that day. And
I'm like, wait, you know, this is boom, you know, and then all the wires started. But, so then I think it was fast forward now to, I don't know when, you know, the exact dates, but when they started selling the cars, they decided, okay, we're going to build this car. And it was just like a question of, you know, all right, take my money. Who wants to take my money?
I couldn't get rid of it fast enough.
You know, like, let's do this, you know, whatever it takes. And it was the early cars, they started selling for ridiculous amounts. I mean,
yes, I remember
$500,000 on. There was an auction.
Quite a controversy over those auction
exactly.
versions.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, the early adopters, you know, started paying like super amount of premium for you know, for the car. And I couldn't get to that level, but I said to myself, you know, look, I don't care, you know, I'll have the rest of my life to pay off this debt.
Right.
You know, I'm embarrassed with the burden I'm putting on the family, but I got to get this car. I mean, I work hard, you know, I've made a decent living. This car and me, we definitely have to happen. So I think it was just a couple of months after the delivery started, and I had been tracking a website called FordGTprices.com.
Okay.
And you know, they posted all the cars. Like they just sold, you know, this. I don't know how they found out, but there was this website, and for all I know, it could have been bogus. But who knows now? But you would see the prices, and they started coming down, right? And now they were within, you know, reach. So I found this one dealer in Broward County that had two cars, a blue and a white. But I didn't know about the two cars. I just knew they had a Ford GT. So I went over there, and I walk in, and you know, they were just basically the two cars that I really, really wanted. I didn't want a red one for some reason. I wanted the white and with the blue stripes, or the blue with the white stripes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these two cars and start negotiating with the salesman. And at the time, that dealership was owned by a bigger corporate parent, and the CEO of the organization was there. He came by as we were talking about the car, and he asked the salesman, well, what did he think about driving the car? And the salesman said, Well, he hasn't driven because we don't let anybody drive the cars. And the CEO looked at him and said, how do you expect somebody to pay this amount of money and not enjoy this car for a test drive? What's wrong with you? And the guy said, well, I'll take him out. and I couldn't believe that I was going to be able to drive that car. Well, John, I got to tell you, the second we turned on that car, I knew that it was just a question of how bad am I gonna get hit here, because there was no doubt I loved that car. And it's interesting to look at it from the point of view of, like, let's just say, the sound of that engine turning, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of muted. Looking back now,
Yeah.
right? Because the first thing I did to the car was put a Ford Racing Performance exhaust on it. And the sound went from muted to, oh my God.
I'm even in more love.
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
So it was really interesting, but the second that car turned on, it was just like, oh, listen to that V8. And we took it out, and it has no nannies on it, right? The only thing that car has is ABS.
Wow.
And that's it, right? So it took a lot, of effort from a lot of people to learn how to drive this car, and I remember a couple of times early on, those Eagle Goodyears, they weren't very good. Those tires, they were
Right.
severely compromised, but I didn't know any better. So I just rode, the Eagles for 2 changes. It was about 5,000 miles on the first set and another 2,000 miles before I said, that's it. Everybody's going with Bridgestones, I'm going to Bridgestones. But I want to go back to that point, because on that test drive, I kind of cooked the corner a little bit, right? It wasn't my car.
Sure.
So I wanted to,
see it, yeah.
And that back end just went out just far enough to make life interesting. And I'm like, oh man, this is so special. And we came back to the dealership. I said my goodbyes. We'll talk about it, and I think we consummated the deal over the phone the next day.
Wow.
So it was amazing. And then the other interesting part came after delivery, because I think I put 5,000 miles on it that first year.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, I drove it as much as I could. Everywhere you went in that car, it was, a car show.
Yeah.
I even one day I had paparazzi follow me around, and it's not like today where cell phones would.
Yeah,
start.
you just
It was an actual guy,
Big
throwing,
camera, yeah.
and then the flash would, and then they, everybody expected, there's got to be some movie star,
Of course, yeah, rock star.
or a
rapper,
rock,
yeah.
somebody is famous, and they were obviously very disappointed that I wasn't, but. Nonetheless, it was kind of like a traumatic experience for me, because I'm a very low-key kind of guy, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're like thrown in the spotlight, and I'm like, wait, I didn't want any of this. This is not, it's kind of weird.
I bet it is, because I seen a little bit of that at the Gold Rush Rally. We probably could have solved the United States deficit in the parking lot there that day in the cars. But your car was, again, took the center of attention, and even got a little free decals there for.
Oh my goodness! Actually, they never actually saw the decals, but I heard that before you know it, there were like a dozen decals on the car.
When I seen it, I was like, I ran over there and I had it on live. I was like, Ernie's got to see this. It was kind of harmless, but still.
Yeah, it was harmless.
But it's all in fun. But that event, and I was kind of interviewing a few people there, and. It's just the camaraderie of everybody that has these cars. It's the passion. That's the common denominator. It doesn't matter about where you come from or what you do for a living. It's about sharing the passion that you have for the cars. Lamborghinis. I mean, there was that Mercedes GTR that's supposedly one of 8.
Yeah.
What a pleasure it was to see something like that other than in a catalog or on the internet.
Yeah. You bring up an interesting point. Before you really get, before you immerse yourself in the supercar scene, you have stereotypes, and you think, oh, these high and mighty, big time rollers they're not my kind of guy. I don't think I fit in with these people, and so you have this boundary, and then before you know it, you go there because you want to talk about cars and see cars, and before you know it, you're like, man, this guy is as passionate as I am about his brand or his car or his model, and that's all it was. Right?
Yes.
It wasn't, nobody's trying to steal your money.
No.
There's nobody's trying to be, one off you. There's respect on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's for me, I take it, very, very personally, because I have, before there was a thing about being a brand ambassador, before there was it was important for you to, show the enthusiast about your GT or this and that. I was doing that. I was the the first guy in Miami to get a GT, right? And I'm probably one of the longest serving members of the Ford GT Forum that have actually kept their car and have had it since 05.
Got it, right.
Right, and so a lot of these things are really a lot of us have been doing it for a long time, even before it became a thing that we had to do.
Right.
There's nothing that warms my heart more than being at a gas station and having a dad kind of like come over, hey, sir, would you mind if I take a picture? And so they'll come over and say, can I show my son your car? And I'm like, of course, come on over. And then, you invite them. A lot of times, most of the times, I invite them to sit inside the car.
I was going to say, I've witnessed that.
Yeah.
Yes, I've witnessed that.
And if you ever have a chance, whenever we're somewhere, look at the kids' faces.
Yeah.
They go bonkers. It's like, how is this man letting me do this, right? That he's got some ulterior motive.
Right, exactly.
And no, I'm not selling him anything. I'm not, trying to do anything. But it's
he's putting that spark in their brain.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Because
well, it's funny because that night at Town and Kitchen that night, there was a young man, family sitting there having dinner, and you were on your way out. You were getting ready to leave, and they were having birthday dinner with their son that night.
That's right.
And somehow they initiated the conversation, and again, you let that young man sit in the car, and again, his face just lit up, and he was smiling, and I told Dad, I said, now you can look forward to what he wants next year for his birthday.
There you go.
So,
maybe that little boy, won't turn out to be a car enthusiast. Maybe he will. But what I'm hoping for is that he remembers that point where he sat in a supercar for the first time.
I'll remember it. I know that, and I remember it for multiple reasons, and that's why we're doing this interview, because of it's the infectious passion, I call it. And I posted a picture of him after he drove his car officially first time, like he wanted to, on the Homestead racetrack this weekend. Talk a little bit about that.
My gosh, it there's it's really, really, how do I say this? I'm kind of at a loss for words, which isn't very common with me. But I've never tracked a vehicle before. There's this fear, right, of losing your investment, of not being protected, because if you ever have a problem on a track, if you don't have track insurance, your regular insurance won't cover you.
Oh yeah, no.
So, I haven't overcome that hurdle until that day. And I didn't have insurance on that day.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, which is very scary, because I thought I was going to be able to buy it there.
Right.
And it turned out to be
well.
not possible. But anyway, going back to that, this car has been built as a track car. And where they homologated it, for road use.
Exactly.
Right. But deep down in the heart of that car, it's a race car. So I've been babying it for about 1,000 and change miles, and it was important to me to be able to talk about it from an intelligent point of view, not just be a homer, right? And so it was like this desire, this thing was pulling me. That track was pulling me, even though I didn't know what day it was, but that was going to happen.
Said you're coming.
I have to do this. But so then you have the issue of skill. I'm not skilled to do this, and then that's where Bob came in. Bob took me a couple of laps, and he showed me the what the reality was. When you have a classroom session and they tell you things, but it's quite another story altogether to actually do it. So it was such an amazing rush of emotion when you're understanding for the first time, truly understanding,
Yes.
right, what this car does and how it composes itself and how it makes a rookie feel like like a Superman,
like a pro,
like
exactly,
a pro,
yeah.
And it is just everything came to me, right? It was a rush of emotion. It was just exhilaration. It was adrenaline. But at the same time, I got off the car and I'm like, now I get it. Now I understand what Raj Nair was talking about, what Hamadi was talking about, what Chris Fenson was talking about. All these people that collaborated to make this amazing road car, slash
Into what
race
it
car.
is, sir, yeah.
And that's where it all came, it came out, and it was just like a humongous smile on my face.
It was, and I was very glad to be in that spot when you came off. I got a couple clips which I posted last night of that car, boogieing down the front straightaway. It's something to see. So I'm sure the same smile was on your face as you were going down the straightaway.
It was just something, man. I think I took it at 140.
That's awesome. I was, as you know, I told you I had to ride. I got the privilege to ride in Blake's 2017 at Daytona last year. And hit the 160 club down the back straightaway. And he was doing it with no problem. I think we were 163 or whatever. Everybody was getting to right around 160, and it was with ease, because he wasn't driving it like it was its potential.
Yeah.
But highly impressed with that car as a track car, because I would have never dreamed that I would have got to ride in one in the street application, let alone to be offered a ride at Daytona. We've invited you, and I know you've accepted the invite, so I'm sure you're looking forward to that day.
Oh gosh, am I ever? I'm making plans to get myself a helmet. I'm sure you already saw that the car has a racing harness now.
Yes, you've added that and the new logo. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah. So we're going forward, with plans to be ready by December. I'm hoping to have a few other track sessions, under my belt before then. But I hear that Daytona is a wonderful track to be able to, to take it to the next level.
It has a little bit of everything, because even like in the beginners classes, you can there was a young man out there who had a 4-door Pontiac G8 with street tags from Illinois, and he would take all his stuff out when he got there in the morning, and he would drive it. And there was a stock Mustang there was GT4 cars there was a open wheel Indy car there that somebody had bought off of the old Ray Hall team. So you had a variety of all the different classes, and that's what's the beauty about this event that we have, is that you don't have to be a pro driver. You don't have to be anything. You could just show up with your daily driver for one day and get your sessions in, and you don't even have to drive it like a race car. You could just come out there and drive it in the beginner sessions and just get to know your car and get to know how it, the weight transfers, how it corners a little better without the traffic and without the ridiculousness of what we deal with, especially here in Miami on the streets. But and that's kind of what we want to embrace the whole racing community with Team Shelby Racing is that you don't have to have a Shelby. Yeah. It's everything. We just want to share the passion of what we do and the cars that we have.
Well, I'll tell you, I feel like an evangelist now. I want other people that have similar interests, like mine, and are concerned with, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to do that. I don't know if my car is good enough to do that. I don't know if, I feel like spreading this message to others and say, hey, you've got to try this because it is awesome. Take it from me. It's amazing. It's not about the car. It's about the experience. Yep. It's about, the enjoyment, right? And especially doing something for the first time.
Yep.
There's always
a rush of that, because if you like it, guess what? You'll be back.
You're hooked.
Exactly.
I left there and I have a buddy in Austin and I said to him, I swallowed the hook, the line, and the sinker.
So I know ECS is having another event the 31st of August. I've got my schedule booked. Hopefully my work schedule doesn't get in the way again. But any plans to go back out there? Is that
not soon? That day. I've got.
I know you got a schedule.
I've got a schedule that I have to follow, but it's. I've got a tricky schedule with my other pursuits, and it takes me away for quite some time during the fall. But I am going to, reinsert my this other passion that I've developed back into my schedule somehow.
Yeah, we could do a whole nother show here on Ernie's other passion that we similarly share, which is hunting, and but we won't get into that. We'll save that for another day and time because that's a whole nother thing. But Ernie, I can't thank you enough for your time and your infectious passion for not only the cars but life. Every time I'm around you, every time I see your smile, I get that same feeling, and that's what we want to convey to others. It's not about the cars. He said it right, hit it right on the money. It's about the passion from the people who own those cars.
It is.
Forget the stereotypes. Forget the stigma. Just to see and feel the people for who they really are, and they're just passionate people who enjoy life the same way as you, but just a little bit faster.
Or different color.
Different color, exactly. Ernie?
I appreciate you coming over.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
What a fun time we've had. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Team Shelby Racing Show. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, check us out on the web at www.teamshelbyracing.net for all our current events and track dates.